Hello, everyone. I hope we're online. Hey, so today we have an exciting webinar. We're going to introduce a feature our team has been working on for the last, how many, like 9 months or so? And maybe like we've been thinking about it for a couple of years now. So it's an exciting moment for us. So let's jump straight in. Today we're talking about Argo CD and Octopus. And this is one of the most significant capabilities we introduced for Kubernetes so far. So who are we talking to today? Today we have Trent here. Trent, do you want to make a short intro?
Yeah, for sure. G'day, my name's Trent Mohay. I'm one of the senior engineers on the team. And yeah, as Kit said, we've been working on this for well, I've been on about 6 months. So it's come together really nicely. I'm really glad to be here.
And I'm Kit. I'm a product manager, and I've been working with Trent and the team on that, like discovering everything related to Argo and Octopus. So what are we going to talk about today? So the main purpose for this webinar is explain what the feature is doing and how you can use it and why, when you might find it useful. And also we'll talk about when you won't find it useful and when you should do something else. So who is it for? I would say it's for software and platform engineers and also DevOps who use Argo CD, but mostly for deploying in-house internally built software. So it's less about cluster bootstrapping, but we focus more about software delivery cycle and CI/CD. So how we will structure the talk today? I'll start talking about why we build the feature, who is it for, and what it does, what's the main value there. And then I hand over to Trent to talk a bit more in depth about how it actually works, what does it do behind the scenes. And then Trent shows us the demo, exactly what you should click and how you can try the feature. Then we have a few FAQs, like a few questions people ask all the time, and we answer them. Then we talk about how you can try it right now, and yeah, that will be it. In the meantime, while we talking about all of that, just feel free to put your questions in the comments, and if the question is relevant to a particular section, we'll just pause and answer it right there. So don't wait for a question till the end. It's actually way better if you ask them as we go. Cool. All right. So why are we seeing Octopus? The main thing is Argo CD is a very popular tool, as you all know, as all of you joined the webinar, I guess. And this is almost the default, close to default tool for Kubernetes, and definitely the most popular GitOps tool. And Kubernetes is the default target, right? So when we hear new customer or new company writing new software, it's 99%, okay, 85% would be Kubernetes based. And even if you talk to someone who has like old-ish legacy software, maybe running on bare metal or VMs, at some point they have a plan to move to Kubernetes or like migrate or write a new software and replace it. So this is like the target for us as Octopus. At the same time, Argo CD being a great tool for GitOps and allowing you to sync your configuration with the cluster doesn't really solve the CD problem, which I guess some of you already know. So you can't really easily automate environment promotion, especially if you want to add this multi-steps before and after. Maybe you want to run some testing, maybe you want to add some configuration management controls, etc. So this is just doesn't work with Argo out of the box. So people build a bunch of solutions how they can add Argo, embed Argo into the CI/CD process. And usually it works with some glue like custom scripts and using some CI first tools like maybe GitHub Actions or GitLab. So we saw customers doing this, and we saw them doing this with Octopus as well, with a bunch of custom scripting. We just thought that there is opportunity for us to provide something better. So the whole idea of this feature is Octopus is a CD platform, and we have all the CD features available right there. So we wanted to just enable people to use Octopus with Argo without custom scripting and a bunch of workarounds, just basically plug and play. Let's talk a little bit more about how it actually works. Yeah. So in a nutshell, what we're talking about here is Octopus is not going to replace Argo or augment Argo in any way. So it's not like an Argo addition or plugin. It's more like a replacement for some other tools people might use or processes. Some people still use manual file editing or some cron jobs running some Git commits or some scripts in Jenkins. So we won't replace this part of the equation, not the Argo CD. Okay, so why is it helpful? Talking to a lot of people over the last couple of years, what I personally learned, and feel free to disagree with me, is that Argo CD actually works great if you have tasks at certain scale. For example, you want to bootstrap clusters, it's amazing. You want to deploy 5, 10 apps, it's perfect. You probably don't need more than one instance, maybe 2 if you have separate instances for production, and it just works. But at some point, as you start to grow and you have maybe 300 microservices, and then next day you have 1,000 microservices and you have multiple clusters, maybe it's your regions and you have 10 or 15 of them, or maybe it's your customers and you have 300 or 500 clusters. At this point, it gets really messy because Argo doesn't scale out of the box. You need to do some optimization to scale it well. Now it's actually getting better, but still, it's a bit of management. And then you have multiple instances. You have issues like with switching between browser tabs to have the one observability panel view. So all that kind of increases complexity and your maintenance cost. What we want with this solution is actually got to some kind of plateau. So as you grow, especially for developers, for dev teams, you shouldn't face this exponential complexity growth. We hope you'll have more like a linear. Yeah, it will get a bit more complicated if you have thousands of apps, but it shouldn't be 10 times worse. Cool. So what does it do? In a very, very simple way, and trying to explain more. So behind the scenes, Octopus does just two things. First of all, it updates manifest in Git. So Argo has a source, multiple sources sometimes. It uses those sources to sync status the cluster. Octopus works with those sources. If you have ham values file, we'll update ham values file. If you have plain YAML or customize, we'll update those. So Octopus does commits. And at the same time, Octopus also gets health and sync information from your Argo and show you this information on the screen. So you know what happens with the app, and you also can change that manifest. But except for that, Argo will still do all the magic, all the syncing, all the continuous reconciliation. So this is on Argo side. Okay, do we have any questions so far? No, we don't, but we have a lot of people from all over the world. That's amazing. Okay, Trent, I'm over to you. Tell us how it works.
Excellent. Thanks, Kit. Okay, so I think I'll drive the slides if that works for you, Kit. So to start with, so obviously Octopus and Argo are going to be working together to do the new work we've been building. So to get this working, the first thing we need to do is get Octopus connected to Argo. Then after that, we're going to need to map your Argo applications into specific Octopus projects so we know which deployment processes are responsible for upgrading which Argo apps. After that, we're going to need to add some Argo specific steps to our deployment processes. So depending on what it is you want to be modifying in your Argo app, we'll create a step and we'll define that behavior there. Then we're going to do our release, deploy it out, and then hopefully be able to see some feedback. And then after all of that, hopefully we'll be able to use some triggers in Octopus so we can automate that whole process. So the next few slides, we're going to drill into each of these steps in a little more depth so we can really understand what's going on. Okay, so the first thing that's worth saying is that Octopus needs to be able to connect to the Argo instance, and we need to be able to do that securely. So we've created a new gateway application which sits inside your cluster and creates an SSL gRPC connection to Argo, and then one also back out to our Octopus server. And that link is really used for collating application and cluster related information that we can send back to Octopus to maintain a cache. So as we're updating our applications, we know where and what needs to be done. Like I said, there's obviously two SSL connections there, one going out to server, one going to Argo. They can both be configured independently, just depending on what your current infrastructure is. So you can use CA certificates, self-signed certificates, or use plain text, depending on how your cluster is configured. So with that set up, the next thing we need to do is to annotate your Argo applications with enough information that Octopus knows which application to update when a project executes. So on the right-hand side of that slide, you can see there's a few sample annotations which really just they're that identifier. They're that link that Octopus needs to be able to get from our world into Argo's world. So terrific. Once that's set up, obviously this is a code-first solution. We're trying to stick with the Argo YAML. So most of your configuration is going to happen in there.
Let's maybe mention, Trent, here that because we have annotations, you can actually embed them into your web apps and app sets. So you don't really need to go and change all your apps manually, adding those mapping to Octopus projects, environments, and tenants. Instead, you can configure your generator and your application set once. And as soon as you have, let's say, new cluster, new folder in your Git, or whatever generator you use, Octopus will just, first of all, Argo will create an app for you with the right annotation, hopefully. And second, Octopus will just know that the app exists. And next time you deploy to this environment and tenant, it will just pick it up and start deploying. We actually have two questions. So can we answer them right now? I think we can.
Sure.
So the first one is, Nikita is asking, is this comparable to Cargo from Acuity, but better? Really hope so. I mean, the approach is different, right? So Cargo is kind of built on top of Argo. We are trying to have a separate tool that talks to Argo integrate closely. So you can debate about like technical approach, which one is better. But I think because, and a personal opinion, no offense to Cargo, I think Cargo is still early days as a CD tool. So Octopus is like way more mature CD tool. So I think CD wise, it should be better. That's what we hope for, especially with all like airbag templating and other capabilities. Then Isaac is asking, when will it be available for self-hosted Octopus server? It definitely will. So now the tool is AAP. I'll talk about it later. It will stay in AAP for some time, and we're really actually looking for feedback. That's why we're having those webinars, and we'll ask for feedback multiple times via newsletter, etc. So we aim for this feature to be available in self-hosted release in December, but it still be AAP. So it won't be general availability, but you can try it, you can use it. So it's working. We'll keep updating it. So December, in actual December is early access. Yeah, we will answer first next question when we get to triggers. I think that's relevant. Okay, sorry, Trent. Please keep going.
No, that's all good. It's all good. Okay, so terrific. So I suppose at this stage of the game, what we're saying is that we've managed to connect Octopus to Argo. We're able to see the applications that are there. We've asked you to add some annotations to your applications so that we can create a mapping from the Argo side of the world into the Octopus side of the world. And so the next question then really comes down to, what is it that I want to do to my applications in Argo? And I guess we really saw two key operations here. The first one is what we call image tag update, which is that you have a repository of theoretically Kubernetes YAML, and that's being used to populate your cluster. And it may reference a handful of different container images. As those containers up issue, we push new versions of them into a repository. Would really like to have some sort of triggered behavior which goes across to Argo and updates just the image tags. We don't want to modify any behavior. We don't want to modify any parameters. We just want to be able to look through our deployments, find where Nginx is referenced, and update it from 1.28 to 1.29. And so we've created a step which allows you to say, here's the containers that I'm interested in. Please go and update them when the deployment executes. So that's the first idea we had. The second idea is much broader and I think a lot more powerful, which is that it's basically creating a manifest from a set of templates which you've pre-created. Then we populate them with the Octopus variable system, and then we push them out to your application registry repository. And so that really means that you can now lean on the Octopus templating engine to produce your entire application with the right templates. So yeah, I'm not sure, Kit, do you want to mention anything about either of those two? Because obviously you can kind of mix and match those steps depending on ownership boundaries and stuff.
Yeah, I think maybe let's go to the next slide because we have a bit more in-depth view on those options.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, so the first, going into that image tag replacement step, Argo has really got three different use cases in this space, right? That your repository could be just raw Kubernetes YAML, it could be a customized project, or it could be a Helm chart. And what Octopus does in each of those cases is slightly different. So like I said, if it was plain Kubernetes YAML, we will be able to look through that well-formed YAML, find where images are referenced, and update their versions as required. With a customized file, we do something slightly different, but we're trying to only modify your customization file. We don't want to drill into all of your templates. We just want to update the new tag field in your customized files in order to update the images that you're using. And Helm was tricky. Again, we don't want to drill into your literal Helm chart. We just want to update your values file. So we want to have as light a touch as possible. But obviously everyone's values file is a different shape. And so therefore the way that you nominate the images that are being used is different for each and every one of you. And so we need you to give just a little bit more information in a new annotation, which explains some of the structure of your Helm file. It's not terrible, but definitely love some feedback on that one when people get a chance to play with it. So yeah, definitely interesting use case for the Helm, but it has been beaten. The two things that are worth mentioning about things we do not do, we will not modify your application, like the literal application YAML. Okay, we will only ever modify the repository that it references. And so that really means a few things. One, if you've got hard-coded versions in your application YAML, we won't modify it. And we also won't be modifying if you have like inline values content in that application YAML. So that's the kind of image tag replacement. It's really quite simple, but we'll do an example of that in a few minutes.
Let's talk a bit more about why, when it's useful. So what's good about it? It's incredibly straightforward. You create a step, you point the step to a container, it just works. That's it. An Octopus will work only on a certain fields in the file. That means that if you, for example, you use customize, if you're changing anything else in those files between your deployments, all the changes will just stay. So basically you can use Octopus in parallel with other tools you want to use for configuration management, or you can use Octopus and just change those manifests manually if you want to change replica sets or something like this. So Octopus won't own the manifest, it makes sense. It will just update contain image tags. By the way, we just told you that you can't use Octopus to update app manifests. You actually can, but for this, in this case, your deployed app should be app of apps. But this is like a bit meta, so we wouldn't advise that as your first project with Octopus. But it works if you have a bit more experience with how the whole thing works. Okay, let's jump to the next one.
Indeed. Okay, so the manifest template is quite a different approach to what we've just talked about. So the image tag step is responsible for reading your repository and modifying it in place, whereas the manifest template step is different, which is that we have a repository of input templates sitting somewhere, not in Argo. Octopus would read those templates in, we'd apply our Octostash variable engine to them, and then write them out to your Argo repository. It can either work on an entire directory structure, or if you only need to update certain specific files, it can do that instead. But this really says that we've spent the time to describe our application in the templates, knowing that they'll get specialized as they pass through Octopus and out into Argo. So this is much more of a pipeline rather than a write-back operation. Again, this can only operate in your repository. It will not operate directly on your application YAML, ignoring the words Kit has previously just said.
So why is this good though? So what this allows you to do is it allows you to create something like a gold image for your manifest. Think about it. If you have, let's say, 50 apps connected to one product, maybe you have 50 regions in production, 50 customers, you have maybe a lot of environments. So at some point, you might want to have strict control on who, how, and when can update those manifests. If you want that, what you can do, you can have one folder as a template folder that Octopus will look at. We call it input folder. This folder will have all your manifest template as one, like, one image, not image as a container image, but like a template for a manifest. And then you can even lock your Git changes for everyone except for Octopus. So the only way to update actual manifests for the application for apps for Argo would be Octopus creating the file from the template and committing it there. Or you can be a bit soft, you can allow people to change things right in Argo source folder. But then with the next deployment, Octopus will rewrite all the changes. So for example, you have an issue, you want to hotfix it, you write changes right in the manifest, you found it's working, and then you need to move those changes into the template. because the next deployment will rewrite everything. Or if you're experimenting, you find something is not working, perfect. Just redeploy the release with Octopus, all the changes will be wiped out. So this is more like a centralized, controlled way of managing a manifest. More strict, more auditable, obviously complies with airbag and other configurations, and this is where you can actually leverage Octopus to extend.
I think, one of the things that I found playing with this step in particular is that often I need to deploy the same application to two places, but they're slightly different. This one needs to be in US East, this or not if you're in AWS. This one needs to be in AU East, and it allowed me to have a standardized structure, but then let the Octopus variables just subtly modify it before I pushed it out. And for me, that's where I got real power, that suddenly I could say, my staging environment looks the same as my production environment. It's the same app, but it needs to have subtly different configuration. So for me, this really led into that environment progression work that Octopus supports.
Okay, let's move on.
Right, so up until now, we've been saying that Octopus obviously does some work and pushes it into your repository, and that's terrific while you're talking about testing, development, staging. But when you're talking about your production environment, they may not be ideal. As such, these two steps that we've delivered have both got the ability to say, I usually want to commit, like just directly to the branch. But for production or for maybe other specific environments, I really want to raise a PR. And so you're absolutely able to configure that in our step. At this stage of the game, Octopus deems the step completed when the PR gets created, not once it's been approved. That work's coming. It's definitely in the pipeline, but it's not available in this EAP release. And finally, when talking about these things, specifically, this isn't related to the step, but obviously it's all related behind the scenes, which is that now that you've performed this work, you want to have some feedback that it's been completed successfully and that Argo knows the changes have gone and that they've been merged into the cluster. And so for those of you who have played with our Kubernetes live status, the Argo work absolutely hooks into that, and you can see the status of all of your deployed applications.
And that's actually a good chance to answer one of the questions we had before. So how is Octopus solving scaling issues in Argo CD? So Octopus doesn't really solve issues in Argo CD, but what you can do, you have two paths here, right? One is you actually optimize Argo. You use Argo agent, you use something else, you add more resources, and you want Argo to work faster. However, what you can do, and maybe you'll do that as well, you can use multiple Argo instances. Let's say have 10 clusters per instance, and then have maybe 5 or 10 of those. So what Octopus allows you to do, Octopus allows you to add all the instances to Octopus, and Octopus will work with all of them at the same time. So it doesn't matter for Octopus if you have your app, for example, one of the apps for dev environment could be on instance 1, your test environment could be on instance 2, and your production could be multiple apps across 15 different Argo instances. For Octopus, it doesn't matter. Octopus will deploy across all of them, and you'll have all of your app's status on the live dashboard. So that's our approach to solve scalability. We basically allow developers to look at one screen and use one tool for deployment. Doesn't matter how many Argo instances are beneath that. So basically, if you keep your Argo instances small, they're fast running, you don't need to do a lot of black magic to make it scale. Octopus allows you just to connect all those instances with Octopus and just do the thing you want to do. Hope it answers the question, but let me know if not. We're going to the demo next, right, Trent?
We are going to the demo next.
And maybe let's answer 2 more questions because we have them, so we don't wait for too long. So we were going to talk about triggers. So in Octopus, as you know, you can configure trigger and create release and start deployment on certain events. An event could be a container image tag got updated. So you push a new container, Octopus will spot the container, start deployment, or create release, and you decide when to start deployment could be also immediately started. Same is true for Helm chart. So you have a new version of Helm chart, Octopus spotted, create release, start deployment. And same is true for Git. You have a new version, you have a new commit in Git, you change the file in Git, Octopus will create release, start deployment. So that's our approach. Argo can start deployment on Git commits. But here we have a chain. So first, Octopus will spot a new container, a new Helm chart, or a new Git commit. Octopus will do its magic, create release, kick off deployment. During the deployment, Octopus will update manifest, let's say, Helm values file for your Argo app. Argo spots this change, sync it to the cluster. The beauty of that is Octopus can do actually a lot of other things before it commits. It can do infrastructure changes, it can do some verification checks, it can do scale up, scale down procedures and all that. So you can trigger all this process, not just commit file with Octopus, and then Octopus will do the rest. Finally, what are the key differentiators in comparison to continuous delivery and GitOps from Harness? Yeah, we actually looked at Harness when we started. I mean, as any other competitor, when we started building this. Personal opinion, I think Harness made it a bit complicated. You have two different places in your CD tool, one place where you need to install those Argos, connect them, and basically look very similar to some other tools, which I would call something like control plane. And then you have your pipeline where you need to configure this, and essentially you'll do probably the same thing, just deploying, changing files in Git, doing commits. So our goal was to make it simpler. So it's all in one place. You really can add your Argo step right in the CI/CD pipeline, and Argo step will talk to Argo, figuring out, because basically what I'm saying is Octopus you don't need to configure your sources, you don't need to explain Octopus what file to change in Git, etc. Octopus just gets information from Argo and does deployment. So the key thing that we were looking for is make it simple, make it feel like Octopus, and allow people to just build GitOps steps, add them to the CI/CD process. I think that's a big difference for me. It's like, just if you try it, you feel it. Just the first 30 minutes, the first hour would be different. All right. Let's go to the demo.
Let's go to demo. Okay, I'm just rolling up my sleeves in an attempt to prepare myself. Terrific. So we've got an Octopus instance here, and you can see we've got two projects, and I've named them very aptly: inject Octopus variables to Argo app and update referenced containers. I've named them like this so that I know what they do. Before I actually drill into this, it's worth mentioning that in our infrastructure menu, we've now got a new item, which is our Argo CD instances. So Argo is deemed an absolutely first-class infrastructure item in Octopus. If I drill into that, I can see I have a single Argo instance. It's healthy, it has 4 applications, and it's associated with 2 of my environments. If we drill in a little further, we can see some more information, and we can see the applications that have all been specified. We've got a nice little deep link against each application. So if I click in there, you can see we just jump straight out to Argo. There's our information. Cool. So that's the infrastructure side of the world. Maybe one other thing worth mentioning is that if you want to create a new Argo instance, we've got a little wizard which looks a lot like the Kubernetes agent. For those of you who've used it before, we specify this data and it'll generate us a Helm chart, which we need to install into our cluster. And that'll create that in-cluster gateway application. It's worth noting that we do need an Argo authentication token, because that's effectively the user that Octopus is going to be doing all of this work as. At this stage, it only needs read access to your application and cluster data. We don't do any poking of Argo at the moment. We can't force syncs, for example. But as we evolve, that may change. So absolutely, Octopus needs to have a user in the Argo side of the world that represents their authority to do read activities. Cool, but we're not going to do that today. We're just going to go straight into these steps and have a look at what they're doing. So let's start with the image tag update. So you can see I've got a really simple process here, a single step. And in here, I've said, I need to run this step on a worker. I'm interested in these 3 packages specifically. I'm not trying to tell you what version I care about. I'm just saying these are the things I care about. They could be Nginx. They could be your in-house application like we've got here. The other thing we can specify, we can say, do we want to create a commit message? We can use Octopus variables to specify these things. You're not going to be able to use secrets because we don't want to persist your secret variables or your sensitive variables in your Git repository. And then finally, under my Git commit method, I've said, I really want to make pull requests for production, but otherwise I'm happy with making just a straight commit to the branch. Cool. So that's all I really need to do to get this working. Now, before I go anywhere, I'm just going to jump in here and say, here is my very simple, app that's sitting over in Argo at the moment. And we can see that I have some front-end application. I'm using version 4.4.8. Okay, that's terrific. So let's create a release. And you can see this is the chance where I get to choose what versions do I actually want to use for all of my packages that I'm deploying. And let's just go for the latest version on all of them. Terrific. We'll save that. So those versions are now embedded into the release. So if I ever deploy this release again, it will always push out those versions back to my repository. So this just gives us a little overview of the deployment that we're going to run. And let's kick that off. So we can see that this is now running. We just need to prime our worker before we do the work. Sorry, kid. Anyway, what we should be seeing once this all kicks over is that we're going to go and we're going to pull out the content of this repository, and everywhere that we can find a reference container, we're going to update this number to those values that we specified in the deployment, in the release. Okay, I might let that do its thing, and I might go and have a look at the other step in the meantime, Kit. We'll leave him running, and we'll have a look at our other option. So this is our injecting Octopus variables into your application. So again, when we have a look at our process, super simple. We're going to be running on an Octopus worker, and I've said, I need you to pull a bunch of files from a repository which is specified on this branch in this path. The container images, I don't actually need to specify that. This is a shorthand way so you can lean into Octopus triggers. Again, we have deployment preview. So deployment preview. So when you come in here for the first time, you may not have a clear understanding of what's been mapped and what this will be deploying to. And so if you have a look at your deployment preview, we can quickly see that when I run this deployment process, it'll update my website for development and then my website prod when we go to production. Again, we have commit message. We can choose our commit method. And the last thing we can do is we can say, I really want you to purge the output folder. So potentially you may have orphaned content over in your Argo repo, and you may want to say, I want to clean that out every time and start fresh. So you can absolutely tell Octopus to clean that out before overwriting the templated files. So let's create a release of him. Terrific. And I'll set up a deployment. Okay, so while that's working, let's go back and have a look at our previous execution. And it looks like we finally pulled down all of our images, and now we're pulling down calamari. This is killing me.
Sorry to be jumping around. Just for the first fresh instance of Octopus and fresh worker.
I recently
you have to experience it once. So that's a good news.
Yeah, I moved this across to an AKS worker last night and should have primed the pump. I do apologize. Well, while he is doing work, I actually will jump back to our Git repository for a second. And what I really want to talk about was our templates. So I've got a very, very simple application that we're going to apply the Octopus variables to. It basically deploys Nginx and it dumps in a little bit of HTML. And you can see that this HTML literally contains like an octopus variable. And so when you look at our project, you can see that you can absolutely specify, come here, my friend. So I've got a background color and a replica count set up. So I can absolutely tweak what will be injected into those templates before they go out to Argo via this one panel. So it's really quite nice that I can specify, okay, simple example, but I can specify a different background color for my development or my production instance. But that literally could be anything. So let's see.
I think important note here is that it's not like you must use Octopus variables in the template. You can just use file as a template. So you can have one configuration that you update with some other tool. Could be ACI, could be manual. And then this configuration can be copy pasted in sources depending on what app belongs to what environment. So we use Octopus variables because I think it allows us to be a bit more flexible. But the caveat of that, Octopus variables are stored in Octopus. If you don't want this, you can have everything in Git. Just don't use variables. Just store the configuration that you want to deploy in the input folder, in this like template folder. Octopus will just copy paste and promote it. It's also a way, depending like how do you like, what approach you like more. Okay, back to you, Trent.
So sorry, just to roll it back a little, because I realized we had a little bit of jumping around there. So the first thing we did was that we ran an image update step on our Octopub project, and we can see that we created a single commit about a minute ago. And if we drill into that commit to see what's happened, you can see that all this YAML hasn't been touched except for that one version string. So that's been directly committed. It's on the branch. It's ready to go. But obviously Argo hasn't seen it yet because Argo hasn't synchronized. But if I were to synchronize this, and then it would, if I synchronized now in Argo, this is the latest code it would pick up and it would then publish that out to the cluster for us. I could have auto sync set up, but obviously that would always introduce a little bit of latency.
We disabled it for the demo purposes.
So look, I can drill in and show what the published output was, but I think at the end of the day, that's an interesting byproduct of what's just happened. So the second one, so I think this is lovely, which is that this step, okay, so this is now executed and it's injected our variables, and we've currently got a deployment and a production deployed via Argo. If we wanted to, we could absolutely change the development value to FFF. So hopefully we'll get a white background. We'll create a release of that new variable. Let's save that. And we'll deploy that out to development. So with that running in the background, hopefully this time we won't be pulling all of our images, which would be wonderful. Okay, so we've just pulled down the files that we need to modify from our input repository. We've fired them off to our worker, which is going to do that work for us. And if we come into our Git repository again, and we're going to be on the webinar branch. No, we are going to be on a development branch. Under manifest website, and here's my config map. And we can see it's been updated to FFFF, which is terrific.
As promised, the second deployment is way faster than the first one.
That is quite true. So if we now just synchronize the associated app, and I'll force it to happen. Yes.
Again, in real scenario, you probably would just have auto-sync enabled, but we just make it manual so you can see that result actually changing while we look at them.
And I am being proven a liar.
Demo gods again.
Demo gods. Which is very disappointing because you can see it's actually pointing at the git commit that we've asked it to do. And it's possible that my HTML foo is weaker than I had hoped.
In the meantime, let me answer Benjamin's question about if unexpected production issues are discovered after deploying new release code. Are there any, actually good idea, try incognito. Are there any options to roll back? Yes, actually there are. This is the whole point. So first of all, you can, in the near future, will add verification to the step itself. So the step will wait for the app to become healthy before we conclude the step either as success or failure. However, what we have now in our samples instance, you can actually use a step after deployment. For example, a smoke test. You can have a step to check your, I don't know, New Relic status and whatever. And if this step fails, you can in Octopus process define what should happen in case of failure and what should happen in case of success. So if success, basically nothing, maybe send a Slack notification or email saying deployment happened, all good. If failure, you can configure multiple options. So you can say, just deploy the previous release that was successful, and Octopus will immediately roll back. You can say, no, it's not that simple. Maybe you want to go and roll back a whole bunch of microservices. So in this case, you can actually do multiple rollbacks based on one deployment failure. So you can actually combine, and that's the beauty of having this like multi-step process. You can create your like failure scenario, what Octopus should do if the failure occurs. So it's actually this is actually one of the points of having this embedded in the CI/CD process. And then another question is, and I hope it answers, why is Octopus release deployment pulling the images? That's a good question. So Octopus pulling images only if you give it images, and it pulling images to get the new tag value. The thing is, for the container image update, we need this information because that's exactly what we're doing. We're updating this image tag value in your source. For the other step, if you specify container images, we're pulling them because those values, contain image tag, will become Octopus variable. So that means that if in your template you can use this value, this variable, and Octopus will just supply the value. Basically, Octopus, you can replace and update containers automatically with Octopus. That's the whole point. Make sense? If you don't add container images for the template step, it won't pull images. We actually don't, we don't need them, right? Only for like the variable substitution functionality. Finally, Kit is asking, I see you're doing branch per environment. Does Octopus support having a single branch format? Absolutely. Yes, definitely does. Actually, this is the recommended path. So we actually hope you will have multiple folders in one branch, and a folder will represent environment. Again, we just wanted to show you that there are more than one ways, because this is kind of one branch is a bit simpler. Yes, it supports that. You can also have different repos for your environments, which we definitely do not recommend, but you can do that if you want. Cool. Let's move on.
Demo. So, quite exciting. In the background, my screen has gone white. I don't know that it's necessarily worth sharing, other than to say I'm very excited that it worked. Caching incognito mode, I don't know, but I feel somewhat vindicated. And so, look, I think that kind of brings the demo to the end, unless there's something else that you think is worth flourishing.
Well, I think that's it. So basically, as we said, changes files in Git, discovers what to change from Argo itself. You don't need to configure anything in Octopus. And yeah, we pull container images to figure out the tags. For the templates, we don't pull them. If you don't specify them, it will work. It will just work without them as well. Okay, let's go back to slides because I actually have a few things to cover as well. Every time I talk to someone about this, I hear 3 questions. I will answer them now because I assume someone will ask them anyway. So, is Octopus an Argo CD control plane? This is like top 1 question. I hear this all the time. Control plane is a very vague term for Argo, and people mean different things when they say it. So that's why I can't answer yes or no. Octopus does orchestrate deployments, and Octopus provides observability for all apps you deployed via Octopus. However, what many people mean by control plane, the ability to install, update Argo CD in a special, like kind of native Argo way, you can say, Octopus does not do that. So formally speaking, there is no special UI that you can use to configure your Argo, add another class to Argo, or maybe remove something, or like, configure privileges, or add new user. That's not Octopus. In this regard, we're not a control plane. Having said that, you can actually, as any other product, you can deploy Argo and update Argo with Octopus, because we have projects we actually deploy software. So that will just work. It just won't work the same way it would work with other tools, like, for example, Acuity. So is Octopus control plane? Not in a way that other tools may present themselves, but you can do way more advanced deployments with Octopus if you want to. Can Octopus do GitOps now? Yes, Octopus actually integrates with Argo CD and supports its way for working. So if you, after those GitOps principles, you can definitely do that. And yes, Octopus can be configured to pull in the pull mode versus push mode. So Octopus will create releases and trigger deployments for you after you updated manifest in Git, if we're talking about the golden image, for example, or if you uploaded new Helm chart. So yeah, you can achieve the same process. Does Octopus work with Argo rollouts? Yes, it does. So Argo rollouts is just another CRD. It's an object. You can deploy it. We have steps in the community allow you to control rollouts. So you can deploy rollout and have another step. Then let's say have pause and then have a step to promote it to the next stage, and then have test and then promote it to the next stage, etc. But for now, we don't allow you to do the promotion via UI. So, but we're actually thinking about it. So if you have strong feelings about, I have a promotion button in Octopus UI, let us know. We can add it. We just haven't received feedback on it yet. And that's it. Let me answer more questions that we have in the chat. Is there any visibility in Octopus to see Argo CD application health or sync? Yes, there is. As soon as you deploy the app, you have. Trent, can you share our samples instance? So basically, as soon as you deploy something, you have one dashboard with all the projects and all the environments. There is a toggle up there that says live status. You click the toggle, you see the health of all the apps you deployed. You can click on each app and see information about the app health and status. We're actually working on adding more data there. So you will, very soon, you'll be able to see not just your app health, but also all the resources and logs, events, manifests, so all this stuff. Okay, and as soon as Trent is logged in, we'll show you that. Is Argo CD piece part of Starter Professional Enterprise? Everything. So it's not limited by license, Alex. You will have it with any license. You will have it as a trial. And yeah, here you are. So yes, Trent, can you go to the main dashboard? I think the main dashboard gives us a bit more. So yeah, no, even main dashboard.
Like the Octopus dashboard.
Yeah, so we have here 6 apps, and you see that these 6 projects. Each project has 2 environments, so altogether we're looking at 12 apps. For each app, you see health, and if you click on it, you'll get more information about this app. And again, this list will just keep adding here, because for now you just see the link to Argo and the app itself. If you have multiple apps in one environment, you'll see all of them, obviously. In the near future, near means like Trent's team is working on this right now, you'll see resources and logs, events, and other stuff as well. So this is coming. Whew. All right. Any other questions? Not yet. Let me finish with a few more slides before the end of the hour. Yes, here we go. So how you can try it? It's available right now in Octopus Cloud. The only thing you need to do is go to our Octopus Cloud instance, click the Argo CD instances menu under infrastructure, and connect to your first Argo instance. That's it. And then just start deploying. You can also go to samples, and this is the link, Octo samples Argo CD. You probably know samples. This is our like demo library available to everyone. It's the instance you can play with. There is a space called Argo, and we pre-configured a bunch of projects for you, so you can have a feeling of how it works with Helm, Customize, and YAML for both image update scenario and template scenario. So you can go there and just explore, even if you don't want to configure this on your instance in the cloud. And as I said before, it will come to on-prem with the next release, still in early access, but it will be there. Finally, this is the first release. We actually shipped this less than 2 weeks ago. So your feedback, I actually appreciate having like that many people on the webinar right now. This is amazing. And your feedback is actually really critically important. We have our roadmap. In the roadmap, we have our Argo card. If you leave a comment there, that would be a great help. If you let us know, for example, yeah, guys, that doesn't really fit my scenario because of blah, that's really helpful. If you let us know that it fits your scenario, but you need a bit of more functionality here and there, also perfect. If you're happy to spend 15 to 30 minutes talking to us via Zoom and just sharing your thoughts, that's amazing. Please let me know, and you also can reach me via like community Slack or any other channel. So please do that, because this is the best thing you can help us with, and we really appreciate that. And this is it. I think we answered all the questions we had, so we probably can skip Q&A. And yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to this. I really hope it's helpful. We have 5 more minutes. Any more questions we can answer? Are we good? I think we're good. Just in case, going very back to the beginning, if you want to give feedback, again, use the roadmap or use our emails. Where are emails? Emails. So you can also send us emails if you have something to share. Please do. Don't hesitate. Really important for us. How many resources are needed? CPU. Right. Trent, this is for you. I think the gateway is extremely small, but you know more.
Yeah, look, absolutely. It's a great question. We are currently putting the system through a level of stress testing to see how far we can push the boundaries before things start breaking. The gateway is incredibly light. It doesn't have a particularly large memory footprint. It doesn't store data. It is just a data router. So that's not going to cause any concerns. Octopus server, again, most of the time, we are not doing a lot of work on any of these things. So I'm not expecting a large CPU increase on the server either. The current level of performance that we ran against was 5,000 Argo apps, I think it was, Kit. And the biggest problem we ran into was Argo. But don't say that outside of this community. So yeah, I think the short answer is that this should be running without a visible impact to your existing infrastructure.
And I just shared our community link in the chat. If you go to this page, you'll see like 3 options, and the first option will be join the discussion on Slack. So if you click that, you will open our Slack community, and there is a Kubernetes channel. And all our team, Trent, myself, and 11 other people are actually every day in this Slack channel, so you can send your questions there. Whew. And that's it. Thank you. Thanks for all the questions. That was great. Thanks for the demo, Trent.
No
And
problem.
yeah, we'll talk to you very soon, I hope.